London, 1814. Lady Nora Grantham had long ago determined that a woman with a book was a woman armed against the world. At 23, she had survived 5 seasons without succumbing to matrimony, not for lack of offers, but for lack of interest in the gentleman making them. Her father, the Earl of Westmoreland, had begun to despair. Her mother had begun to plot. A Bluestocking spinster is still a spinster, Lady Westmoreland reminded her daughter as their carriage rattled toward yet another evening assembly. Even one with your fortune and face. Nora adjusted her ivory gloves with practiced indifference. And a married fool is still a fool, regardless of how well she secures her settlements. Nora! Her mother's fan snapped open like the wings of an agitated bird. You deliberately misunderstand me. I only wish for your happiness. My happiness is found in my father's library, not in some gentleman's drawing room. Nora's smile was honeysuite and entirely false. Perhaps if men read more and pontificated less, I might find one worth enduring. Marriage, Nora had concluded long ago, was merely a transaction in which women invariably received the poorer end of the bargain. Even with her substantial dowry as leverage, she had witnessed too many bright-eyed débutantes fade into dutiful wives, their spirits dimming with each passing year. Books, however, demanded nothing while offering everything: adventure, knowledge, escape. The truth that Nora would admit to no one, least of all herself, was that she feared disappointment more than spinsterhood. Better to remain unwed than to hope for a meeting of minds and souls, only to discover she had merely acquired a master. The Melford ball tonight will be exceptional, her mother continued, apparently choosing to ignore Nora's impertinence. The Duke of Cavenshire has returned to town. They say he's finally seeking a wife. How fortunate for England's ambitious mammas, Nora murmured, turning to gaze out the window. Another duke to dangle before their daughters like a golden lure. He is said to be handsome. So is a marble statue. And likely just as conversant. And learned. Cambridge, I believe. This, at least, gave Nora pause. Not that it mattered. Dukes, in her experience, were the worst of the lot, so convinced of their own importance that they mistook arrogance for personality. The Melford ballroom blazed with hundreds of candles, illuminating London's elite in their finery. Ladies in delicate silks and gentlemen in stark black and white moved through the elaborate social choreography with practiced ease. Nora allowed herself to be guided through the familiar patterns, accepting dances from acceptable partners, smiling at the right moments, and longing for midnight when they might reasonably depart. During a momentary respite from her dance card obligations, Nora found herself near a cluster of gossiping matrons. The Duke hasn't danced once, one whispered behind her fan. Hasn't so much as looked at a single eligible girl. Pride, another declared. They say his library contains more volumes than the royal collection. Books and breeding, a dangerous combination for producing insufferable men. Nora's interest flickered. A genuine library, not merely shelves of leather-bound volumes purchased by the yard for appearance's sake. Perhaps the evening might yield something of value after all. It was then that she noticed him, tall, broad-shouldered, with the unmistakable bearing of one born to command. His dark hair was unfashionably free of pomade, a rebellious curl falling across his forehead as he surveyed the room with detached amusement. Though surrounded by fawning admirers, he seemed utterly alone. Their eyes met across the ballroom, and Nora felt an unfamiliar flutter beneath her ribs. She frowned, annoyed at her own reaction, and deliberately turned away. Duke or dustman, she had no interest in men who viewed balls as a marketplace for wives. Lady Nora, a cool voice interrupted her thoughts. I believe this dance is mine. She turned to find the Duke of Cavenshire himself extending his hand, though she was quite certain they had not been introduced, much less that she had granted him a place on her card. "Your Grace," she replied with a curtsy that managed to be both proper and dismissive. "I fear you are mistaken. My card is full." "Is it?" His lips curved in a smile that did not reach his eyes. "How unfortunate. Perhaps you might pencil me in for conversation instead. I find I've reached my tolerance for mindless social ritual." Honesty from a duke? The ton will be scandalized. Nora raised an eyebrow. "Though I suspect you care as little for their opinions as I do." "Less, perhaps." He offered his arm. "Shall we scandalize them together? The terrace offers both air and relative privacy." Against her better judgment, Nora found herself accepting. "You should know, Your Grace, that I have no interest in becoming a duchess." "What a relief," he replied as they moved toward the terrace doors. "I have no interest in acquiring a duchess who would consider it a promotion." Lord Christopher Mountbatten, the 8th Duke of Cavenshire, had returned to London with great reluctance and only one purpose: to fulfill his duty to his title by securing a suitable bride. At 32, he could no longer postpone the inevitable. His estates required an heir, his sisters required a hostess, and society required his participation in its endless rituals. None of which explained why he was escorting the notoriously marriage-averse Lady Nora Grantham to the terrace instead of charming some docile debutante. "Are all your social interactions this direct, Your Grace?" Lady Nora asked as they emerged into the cool evening air. "Or am I receiving special treatment?" "I find that directness saves time," he replied. "And time, unlike fortune or title, cannot be inherited or acquired." "A philosopher, Duke." "How novel." Her tone suggested it was anything but. "And what philosophical insights have led you to abandon your admirers for the company of a confirmed Bluestocking?" "The observation that you were the only person in that room not pretending to be enraptured by their surroundings." He guided her to a stone bench partially hidden by ornamental shrubbery. "It suggested we might share a similar affliction." "And what affliction would that be?" "A preference for substance over spectacle." He studied her face in the silvery moonlight. "Tell me, Lady Nora, if you were not here, where would you be?" "In my father's library, naturally. With Herodotus for company." "Herodotus?" Cavenshire's interest visibly sharpened. "The histories, I presume?" "In translation, or the original Greek?" "The original, though Abbott's translation has its merits." Nora tilted her head, reassessing him. "You've read it?" "Several times. Though I find Thucydides more pragmatic in his approach to history." "Pragmatic, yes. Poetic, no." Nora's eye sparkled with the pleasure of unexpected intellectual engagement. Herodotus understood that history without humanity is merely a catalogue of events. A romantic view. A complete one. She smiled, surprising herself with its genuineness. "But I suspect we could debate Greek historians until dawn without resolution." "A debate I would welcome." Cavenshire returned her smile with one of his own, transforming his austere features into something dangerously appealing. "Perhaps another time, in a setting more conducive to scholarly discourse." "Your Grace proposes an unchaperoned scholarly discourse?" "How scandalous." Her tone was light, but her pulse had quickened inexplicably. "I propose nothing improper. Merely a meeting of minds." His eyes held hers. "Unless you find intellectual stimulation improper, Lady Nora." "The most improper stimulation of all, I've been told." She rose from the bench. "But I fear we must return before our absence becomes the subject of speculation." As they re-entered the ballroom, Nora found herself unaccountably reluctant to part company with the Duke. Their brief conversation had awakened something she had long suppressed, the hope that somewhere in England existed a man who might value her mind as much as her dowry or face. A dangerous hope indeed. The following week brought an invitation that sent Lady Westmoreland into raptures and Nora into confusion. The Duke of Cavenshire requested the honour of the Earl of Westmoreland and his family's company at a small dinner party at Cavenshire House. A dinner invitation! Her mother clutched the heavy card as if it might dissolve. And so exclusive, only 20 guests, Lady Jersey informed me. How delightful, Nora murmured, turning a page in her book without absorbing a word. He danced with you twice at Lady Harrington's musicale, her mother continued. And conversed with you for a full quarter hour at the Pembroke tea. Lady Cowper says he's never shown such marked attention to any young lady. Perhaps he simply finds me less tedious than most. Nora! Her mother sat beside her, gently closing the book in her daughter's hands. My dear, I know you've set yourself against marriage, but surely you must see what an opportunity this represents. The Duke is not only titled and wealthy, but by all accounts intelligent and honourable. And undoubtedly seeking a biddable bride to produce his heirs and manage his household, Nora replied, though with less conviction than she might have a fortnight ago. I am neither biddable nor interested in such an arrangement. Yet as she dressed for the dinner at Cavenshire House, Nora took unusual care with her appearance. Her deep blue gown of silk crepe was elegant rather than ostentatious, its empire waistline and modest décolletage emphasizing her natural grace. Her dark hair was arranged in a classical style, with a few artful curls framing her face. You look lovely, her father said as he handed her into the carriage. And remarkably uncomplaining about an evening in society. Even I can appreciate fine food and intelligent conversation, father. She avoided his knowing gaze. Though I make no promises about the latter. Cavenshire House was a palatial residence on Grosvenor Square, its neoclassical facade imposing even among London's grandest homes. Footmen in the Duke's livery ushered them through a marble entrance hall and into a drawing-room where other guests had already assembled. The Duke of Cavenshire moved to greet them immediately, his tall figure distinguished by its lack of ostentation. Where other gentlemen favoured elaborate waistcoats and neckcloths, the Duke wore unadorned black and white, his only concession to fashion a single diamond pin securing his cravat. Earl Westmoreland, Lady Westmoreland. He bowed with perfect courtesy. Lady Nora. I'm delighted you could join us this evening. His eyes lingered on Nora's face with an intensity that made her suddenly conscious of every breath. Your home is magnificent, Your Grace, she said, annoyed to find her voice less steady than usual. Magnificent but cold, I fear. These grand houses often are. He offered his arm. Perhaps you'll allow me to show you something more interesting than gilt ceilings and ancestral portraits before dinner is announced. With a glance at her mother, who nodded encouragement with barely concealed excitement, Nora placed her hand on the Duke's sleeve. I would be delighted. Instead of guiding her toward the other guests, Cavenshire led her through a side door and down a corridor lined with landscapes. I'm violating all propriety, he admitted, but I've been hoping for an opportunity to show you this since our conversation at the Melford Ball. Your Grace intrigues me, Nora said, becoming increasingly aware of his proximity in the narrow hallway. Though I should remind you that even dukes are not immune to scandal. A risk I'm willing to accept. He stopped before a set of double doors carved with intricate designs. What I'm about to show you is something I've shared with very few people. It's rather personal. Before Nora could respond, he produced a key from his waistcoat pocket and unlocked the doors, swinging them open to reveal what could only be described as paradise to a lover of books. The library extended 2 stories high, with a wrought iron gallery circling the upper level. Every wall was lined with bookshelves reaching from floor to ceiling, interrupted only by tall windows and a massive fireplace. Comfortable reading chairs were arranged near the hearth, while a large desk occupied one corner beneath a domed skylight designed to capture the day's natural illumination. "Oh," Nora breathed, stepping past the Duke into the room. "Oh, this is excessive? Indulgent?" There was a note of vulnerability in his voice she had not heard before. "Perfect," she finished, turning to face him. "Absolutely perfect." Something in his expression shifted, relief, perhaps, or pleasure at her approval. "My grandfather began the collection. My father expanded it. I've spent the past decade filling in the gaps and adding contemporary works." Nora moved deeper into the room, drawn to the shelves as if by magnetic force. Her fingers trailed lightly over leather spines, pausing at familiar titles and lingering on unexpected discoveries. "You have the complete works of Mary Wollstonecraft," she noted with surprise. "And Maria Edgeworth. Not typical selections for a ducal library. I collect ideas, not merely titles." He followed her, maintaining a proper distance but watching her reactions closely. "The library at my country estate is even more extensive, though less organized. This is my sanctuary in London." A sanctuary indeed. Nora reached for a volume, then hesitated. "May I?" "Please." His smile transformed his face again, erasing the austere mask he presented to society. "Consider yourself welcome here anytime. Few appreciate books as more than decorative objects." Nora carefully removed the volume, a first edition of Wordsworth's poems, and opened it reverently. "My father has an excellent library, but nothing like this. I could spend years here and never read everything." "The invitation stands," Cavenshire said quietly. "Though I fear it would create talk if you visited unchaperoned." Their eyes met over the open book, and Nora felt a current of understanding pass between them, a recognition of kindred spirits trapped in social roles neither had chosen. "We should return to your guests," she said reluctantly, replacing the book. "But thank you for sharing this with me. It means more than I can properly express. You're the first person who's understood what this room truly represents," he replied. "The others see only wealth displayed in leather and gilt. You see the wealth of knowledge and imagination." As they walked back toward the drawing room, Nora found herself reconsidering every assumption she had made about the Duke of Cavenshire, and about her own resistance to marriage. For the first time, she glimpsed the possibility of a partnership that might enrich rather than diminish her life. A dangerous thought indeed. During dinner, seated at the Duke's right as the highest-ranking unmarried lady present, Nora observed him with new eyes. He conducted himself with the expected dignity of his position, yet she now recognized the subtle humor in his remarks, the quick intelligence behind his measured responses. Twice their eyes met in shared amusement at particularly pompous comments from other guests, creating a sense of private understanding that both thrilled and unsettled her. As the evening concluded, the Duke personally escorted the Westmorlands to their carriage. "I hope you'll consider my library at your disposal, Lady Nora," he said quietly as he handed her in. "Perhaps you might call with your mother when convenient. I believe I have several volumes that would interest you." "You're very kind, Your Grace," she replied, conscious of her mother's barely contained excitement beside her. "I would enjoy that immensely." In the days that followed, Nora found herself in the unprecedented position of anticipating social engagements rather than dreading them. The Duke's presence transformed tedious afternoon calls and evening assemblies into opportunities for brief, stimulating exchanges that left her both satisfied and hungry for more. Yet even as she warmed to his company, a persistent doubt troubled her. What could a man of his position and freedom possibly want with a woman known for her independent mind? Marriage, for him, was a duty, one that required a particular type of wife. Despite their intellectual connection, she could not imagine herself fitting that mold. When Lady Westmoreland arranged the promised visit to Cavenshire House to view the library, Nora steeled herself for disappointment. Surely in the cold light of day, surrounded by the trappings of his ducal status, she would see their connection for the fleeting fancy it was. The Duke himself greeted them, dismissing the butler with a nod. "Lady Westmoreland, Lady Nora. I'm delighted you could come." His formal manner gave no hint of the private understanding Nora had imagined between them. "Your invitation was most kind, Your Grace," her mother replied. "Nora has spoken of little else but your library since the dinner." "Then we mustn't keep her waiting." He led them through the house to the library doors. "I took the liberty of having tea arranged. I thought perhaps Lady Westmoreland might be comfortable in the yellow drawing-room while Lady Nora explores the collection." A transparent ploy for a semi-private conversation, but within the bounds of propriety. Lady Westmoreland, predictably, was delighted by the arrangement. "How thoughtful, Your Grace. I confess these academic pursuits overtax me. If you're certain Nora won't be a bother?" "Not at all. My librarian, Mr. Fletcher, will be present to assist with any requests." He gestured to an elderly gentleman arranging papers at the desk, providing the necessary chaperonage while ensuring they might speak relatively freely. Once Lady Westmoreland had been escorted to the drawing-room, the Duke turned to Nora with visible relief. "Forgive the manipulation, but I wished for an opportunity to speak with you without 20 pairs of ears attending our every word." "A duke need not apologize for arranging his household as he pleases," Nora replied, moving toward the shelves. "Though I'm curious what could require such orchestration." "Perhaps I simply wish to observe you in your natural habitat," he said, his voice lightening. "Like an explorer documenting a rare species." She laughed despite herself. "The Bluestocking in captivity? An unremarkable specimen, I assure you." "I find nothing about you unremarkable, Lady Nora." The sudden seriousness in his tone drew her attention from the books. "Quite the opposite." She turned to find him watching her with an intensity that made her breath catch. "Your Grace." "Christopher," he corrected gently. "At least when we're among the books. Titles feel particularly absurd here." "Christopher," she repeated, testing the familiarity. "I'm not certain what you expect of me." "Only honesty." He moved closer, though still maintaining a proper distance. "I've spent the past fortnight thinking about our conversations. About your mind, your wit, your perspective on everything from Greek history to modern poetry. And I find myself contemplating a future I had not previously considered possible." His expression was carefully controlled, but she sensed the effort it cost him. One where marriage might be more than duty fulfilled. Nora's pulse quickened. "You speak in riddles, Your Christopher." "Do I?" A smile touched his lips. "Then let me be direct. I came to London to find a wife because my position demands it. I expected the process to be as joyless as it is necessary. Instead, I found you a woman who challenges me, intrigues me, and makes me forget my title and responsibilities whenever we speak." "Pretty words," Nora said, fighting the hope rising within her. "But you need a duchess, not a debate partner. Someone who will uphold the dignity of your position and provide the airs you require. I am unsuited to such constraints." "Are you?" He moved to a shelf and selected a volume, opening it to a marked page. "Listen, she is not fair to outward view. As many maidens be. Her loveliness I never knew. Until she smiled on me. Oh, then I saw her eye was bright. A well of love, a spring of light." Hartley Coleridge, Nora identified the poem. "But I don't understand your meaning. Before I met you, I saw marriage as you describe it, a constraint, a duty, a necessary surrender of freedom. He closed the book carefully. Now I see it could be something else entirely. A partnership of minds. A sharing of this, he gestured to the library around them, and everything else I value. Nora felt her carefully constructed defenses beginning to crumble. You cannot mean. I mean precisely what you fear I mean. His voice was soft but certain. I am falling in love with you, Lady Nora Grantham. Not with your dowry or your connections or your suitability, but with your mind and spirit. With the woman who sees my library as a sanctuary rather than a display of wealth. Love? The word felt foreign on her tongue. But we barely know each other. We know what matters. He set the book aside. The rest is detail to be discovered over a lifetime. You speak of impossibilities, Nora whispered, though her heart raced with a dangerous hope. I have no wish to be tamed or molded into a proper duchess. And I have no wish to tame you. Christopher took a step closer. What use would I have for a mindless ornament when I could have a true companion? Someone who understands that this, he again indicated the library, is not merely a collection of books but the essence of who I am. Society would never accept such a marriage, she protested, even as she felt her resolve weakening. A duke and a Bluestocking? We would be ridiculous. Society accepts whatever those with power and conviction present to them, he countered. Besides, I have no interest in society's approval, only in my own happiness. And yours. Nora turned away, overwhelmed by the possibility he offered. I need time to think. This is unexpected. Of course. He stepped back immediately. I've been too forward. Forgive me. No, she said quickly. No, you've been honest. I simply need to be certain my heart is not overruling my judgment. His smile returned, gentle and understanding. A reasonable approach. Take whatever time you require. The library, and I, will be here when you're ready. The following weeks were the most confusing of Nora's life. She found herself alternating between giddy hope and cold reason, unable to reconcile her long-held beliefs about marriage with the unexpected possibility Christopher offered. She confided in no one, not even her closest friends. How could she explain that the Duke of Cavenshire had declared himself not just amenable to her scholarly interests, but attracted to her because of them? It seemed too fantastical to be believed. Their paths crossed frequently in society, and each encounter only deepened her confusion. He was unfailingly polite, attentive without being presumptuous, and somehow managed to create moments of private connection even in crowded ballrooms. A quoted line of poetry as they passed in a country dance. A reference to a book they had both read slipped into ordinary conversation. Small, meaningful touches in a world of superficial interactions. The Ton, predictably, had noticed. Speculation about an attachment between the Duke and Lady Nora Grantham had begun to circulate, causing her mother barely concealed excitement and her father quiet satisfaction. He seems a fine young man, Lord Westmoreland remarked one evening as they returned from yet another social engagement where the Duke had been present. Intelligent. Honourable. Not given to excess or foolishness. High praise indeed, father. Nora smiled at his transparent attempt at casualness. I only mention it because you've seemed different lately. Less adamant in your opposition to marriage. Have I? Nora sighed, seeing no point in continued pretense. Perhaps I'm beginning to wonder if my objections were to marriage itself or merely to the kind of marriages I've observed. Her father patted her hand. A wise distinction, my dear. The right partnership can elevate both parties. The wrong one diminishes them. But how can one be certain, she asked, the question that had plagued her for weeks finally voiced aloud. How can one know that what seems promising in courtship won't become stifling in marriage? One can't know with absolute certainty, he replied thoughtfully. But one can observe character, values, actions rather than words. A man who respects your mind before marriage is unlikely to disregard it after. Even a duke? Nora pressed. With all the weight of tradition and expectation his position carries. Especially a duke, her father said with surprising firmness. Such men are accustomed to determining their own course, regardless of convention. If he values your independence now, it's because he genuinely prefers you as you are, not as society might wish you to be. His words stayed with Nora as she prepared for bed that night. Was it possible that Christopher truly saw her, not as a potential duchess to be shaped into a suitable consort, but as a woman whose mind and spirit complemented his own? The question haunted her for days, until an unexpected opportunity for clarity presented itself. The Wentworth Musicale was, by all accounts, the social event of the week. The renowned soprano Madame Laurent was to perform, drawing the cream of society to the Wentworth's London residence. The Duke would certainly be present. Nora dressed with particular care, selecting a gown of deep green silk that highlighted her complexion and brought out the gold flecks in her eyes. The Westmorlands arrived to find the Wentworth drawing-room already crowded with London's elite. Nora scanned the assembly, her heart giving a treacherous leap when she spotted Christopher's tall figure near the window. He was engaged in conversation with Lord Wentworth and several other gentlemen, but his eyes found hers almost immediately. The slight bow he offered from across the room felt more intimate than a touch. Before she could make her way toward him, however, she was intercepted by Lady Jersey, one of society's most formidable matrons and a fount of gossip. "Lady Nora, how lovely you look tonight," Lady Jersey greeted her with a calculating smile. "Green becomes you. I dare say the Duke of Cavenshire will be most appreciative." "Your ladyship is too kind," Nora replied neutrally. "I understand Madame Laurent's voice is exceptional." "Indeed, indeed." Lady Jersey waved away the change of subject. "But far less interesting than the current speculation about you and the Duke. Society is quite convinced an announcement is imminent." "Society is often convinced of many things that prove untrue," Nora said with a practiced smile. "Speculation is its favorite pastime." "True enough," Lady Jersey conceded. "Though in this case, I wonder if the speculation might be accurate. The Duke has shown you marked preference." "His Grace has been kind," Nora acknowledged, unwilling to feed the gossip mill. "Kind?" Lady Jersey laughed. "My dear, when a man like the Duke of Cavenshire focuses his attention so singularly on one woman, kind is hardly the word. Particularly when that attention is so unexpected." Nora stiffened. "I'm not sure I understand your meaning, Lady Jersey." "Only that you and the Duke seem an unusual match. A man of his position typically seeks—" She paused delicately. "Different qualities in a wife. More traditional virtues." "I see." Nora's voice cooled several degrees. "And what qualities do you imagine His Grace seeks?" "Oh, the usual," Lady Jersey replied with false lightness. "Beauty, of course. Proper breeding. A certain malleability. The ability to uphold his position with grace rather than challenge it with unconventional ideas." Each word landed like a blow, reinforcing every doubt Nora had battled for weeks. "You paint a portrait of an ornament rather than a wife," she said, struggling to maintain her composure. "For a duke? An ornament is precisely what's required." Lady Jersey patted her arm with faux sympathy. "But perhaps His Grace has modern ideas. Though I must say, the betting books at White suggest otherwise." Lord Peryton has £10 on you being firmly brought to heel within a month of the wedding. How edifying to know my future happiness is the subject of gentlemen's wages, Nora said icily. If you'll excuse me, I believe I see my mother requiring my attention. She moved away before Lady Jersey could respond, her thoughts in turmoil. Was the older woman right? Was Christopher's interest in her mind, her independence, merely a temporary fascination that would give way to traditional expectations once the marriage was secured? The betting at white suggested at least some of his peers thought so. The doubt that had been receding in recent weeks flooded back with crushing force. She had been a fool to imagine that a duke, regardless of his personal qualities, could truly accept a wife who defied convention. Society would never allow it. Tradition would never allow it. Eventually, even Christopher would not allow it. When Madame Laurent began her performance, Nora sat rigid with misery, seeing nothing, hearing nothing. She was vaguely aware of Christopher watching her from across the room, but she kept her eyes fixed on the singer, unwilling to meet his gaze. As soon as the performance concluded, Nora approached her mother. "I have a terrible headache," she whispered. "Could we possibly leave early?" Lady Westmoreland looked concerned. "Of course, my dear. Though the Duke has been trying to catch your eye all evening. Wouldn't you like to speak with him before we go?" "No," Nora said too quickly. "No, I couldn't manage conversation just now." "Please, Mother." Bewildered but accommodating, Lady Westmoreland made their excuses. As they prepared to depart, Nora caught a glimpse of Christopher's face, confused, concerned, moving toward her through the crowd. She turned away deliberately, unable to face him with her doubts and fears so raw. For 3 days, Nora refused all callers and declined every invitation. She pleaded illness, which was not entirely untrue. The realization that she had come dangerously close to believing in a fantasy, to trusting that love might transcend the realities of society and position, had left her physically ill with disappointment. On the 4th day, a package arrived at Westmoreland House, addressed to Lady Nora in the Duke's distinctive hand. Inside was a book, a rare edition of essays by Mary Wollstonecraft, and a note: "Lady Nora, I sense that something has disturbed you, though I cannot fathom what. If I have caused offense, I beg your forgiveness. If another has caused you distress, I offer my assistance. If solitude is what you require, I respect your choice, though I confess it pains me. I send this volume as a token of my continued esteem and as a reminder of what I most admire in you, your fierce intelligence and independent spirit. Whatever has transpired, please know that my regard remains unchanged. I remain your devoted servant." Cavenshire. Nora traced her fingers over the words, tears blurring her vision. The note said everything right, everything she longed to believe. Yet Lady Jersey's poisonous suggestions, and the gambling at White's, still echoed in her mind. She placed the book on her bedside table, but did not open it. Instead, she penned a brief, formal note of thanks, making no reference to her absence from society or to their previous conversations about a possible future together. 2 more days passed. Nora emerged from seclusion, attending a garden party at Holland House with determined cheerfulness. If her smiles didn't reach her eyes, no one seemed to notice, except, perhaps, Lady Jersey, who watched her with calculating interest from across the lawn. The Duke was not present, a fact that brought both relief and an unexpected ache of disappointment. "Cavenshire has retreated to his country estate," Lord Carrington informed Nora's mother within her hearing. "Left rather suddenly. Society is quite bewildered by it." "Left London? Without a word?" Nora felt a cold weight settle in her stomach. Perhaps his interest had been more superficial than she'd allowed herself to believe. A fleeting fascination, already fading. Or perhaps, a small voice whispered, he had recognized her withdrawal for the rejection it was and had removed himself accordingly. The following morning brought another delivery, not a package this time, but a letter, again in the Duke's hand. Nora opened it with trembling fingers. Lady Nora, I write from Cavenshire Abbey, where I have retreated to think and to give you the space that your actions suggest you desire. I had hoped to speak with you before leaving London, but your continued avoidance made that impossible. I find I cannot depart without one final attempt at honesty. Something changed after our conversation in my library. Some doubt or fear took hold of you, and I have tortured myself trying to understand what I might have done to cause such a reversal. If my declaration was unwelcome, I apologize for the presumption. If my character has been misrepresented to you, I ask only the chance to defend myself. If the prospect of becoming a duchess, with all the scrutiny and restriction such a position entails, has given you pause, I understand completely. What I cannot understand is silence. After the connection we shared, intellectual, emotional, perhaps even spiritual, to retreat behind polite notes and distant smiles seems a cruelty neither of us deserves. I remain at the Abbey for a fortnight before business requires my presence elsewhere. If you would do me the great honor of visiting, properly chaperoned, of course, I believe I could offer some clarity that might ease your mind. The library here is even more extensive than the one in London. Consider that inducement, if no other moves you. With deepest regard. Christopher. Nora read the letter 3 times, her heart racing. The hurt and confusion in his words were palpable, as was the continued respect he showed for her independence. No demands, no reproaches, only a request for the chance to understand what had gone wrong. And beneath it all, that same understated humor that had first drawn her to him. Consider that inducement, if no other moves you. As if she needed any inducement beyond the chance to see him again, to discover if what she had begun to feel was real or merely a pleasant illusion. Still, the doubts remained. Lady Jersey's insinuations. The wagers at White's. The weight of centuries of tradition that said a duchess must be an extension of her husband's position rather than a person in her own right. She was still deliberating when her father entered the morning room, his expression concerned. "Nora, my dear, are you unwell? You've been staring at that letter as if it contains either your salvation or your doom." She looked up, surprising herself with a laugh. "Perhaps it contains both." Her father sat beside her. "From the Duke, I presume?" "Yes." She handed him the letter without hesitation. "He's gone to Cavenshire Abbey and wishes me to visit." Lord Westmoreland read the letter carefully, his expression thoughtful. "He seems genuinely distressed by your withdrawal. May I ask what precipitated it?" Nora sighed, finally giving voice to the fear that had haunted her. At the Wentworth Musicale, Lady Jersey suggested that the Duke's interest in my unconventional qualities was unlikely to survive marriage. She implied that he would expect me to become a proper, biddable duchess once the wedding was over. She hesitated. She also mentioned that there are wagers at White's about how quickly I'll be brought to heel after the wedding. Her father's expression darkened. Lady Jersey has always found pleasure in sowing discord. As for the wagers at White's, what do such men know of Cavenshire's character? They judge him by their own limited standards. But there must be some truth to it, Nora insisted. A man in his position has expectations to fulfill, traditions to uphold. How could he possibly want a wife who challenges convention at every turn? Perhaps, her father suggested gently, because he himself chafes against those same conventions? Because he values substance over appearance, genuine connection over social advantage. He tapped the letter. This is not the communication of a man who seeks to control or change you, Nora. This is a man in pain, asking only to be heard. What if I'm making a terrible mistake? she whispered. What if I allow myself to love him, only to discover that marriage transforms him, or me, into someone unrecognizable? That risk exists in every marriage, her father said with unexpected wisdom. The question is whether the potential joy outweighs the potential pain. Only you can answer that. Nora stared at the letter, remembering Christopher's face as he showed her his library. The pride in his voice not for the value of the collection, but for the knowledge it contained. The way he had quoted poetry to illuminate his feelings rather than conceal them behind flowery sentiments. I think, she said slowly, that I would like to visit Cavenshire Abbey. Her father smiled. I thought you might. I'll speak to your mother about arrangements. For days later, the Westmoreland carriage rolled through the imposing gates of Cavenshire Abbey. The estate was everything a ducal seat should be, a vast, manicured, and breathtakingly beautiful. Ancient oaks lined the approach to a house that could only be described as palatial, its honey-colored stone glowing in the afternoon sun. Nora felt a flutter of panic as the carriage drew closer. What was she doing? This world, this grand, intimidating world of aristocratic privilege, could never be hers. She would forever be an outsider, a Bluestocking playing at being a duchess. Yet when the carriage stopped before the entrance, it was Christopher himself who came down the steps to greet them, not a butler or footman, but the Duke of Cavenshire, breaking with protocol to welcome them personally. Lord and Lady Westmoreland, he bowed formally. Lady Nora, you honor my home with your presence. His eyes met Nora's, and the controlled mask he presented to her parents slipped for just a moment, revealing such naked hope and relief that her doubts began to waver. Your Grace, she curtsied, her voice steadier than she felt. Thank you for your invitation. I trust your journey was comfortable, he asked as he escorted them into the entrance hall, maintaining the expected pleasantries despite the obvious tension between them. Quite comfortable, Lady Westmoreland assured him, glancing between her daughter and the Duke with poorly concealed excitement. Your home is magnificent, Your Grace. Thank you. It's been in my family for 12 generations. He gestured to a hovering butler. Simmons will show you to your rooms. I thought you might like to rest before dinner. An excellent suggestion, Lord Westmoreland agreed, tactfully creating an opportunity for the younger couple to speak privately. My wife and I would welcome the chance to refresh ourselves. Perhaps you might show Nora the gardens while we rest? The weather is exceptionally fine. Christopher's expression brightened. I would be delighted if Lady Nora is amenable. Nora nodded, her heart racing. The gardens looked lovely from the drive. Once her parents had been escorted upstairs, Christopher led Nora through a side door onto a terrace overlooking formal gardens that stretched toward a distant lake. A pair of footmen followed at a discreet distance, providing the necessary propriety while allowing for private conversation. I wasn't certain you would come, Christopher said quietly as they descended the terrace steps. Your silence these past weeks has been difficult to interpret. Nora took a steadying breath. I owe you an explanation. You owe me nothing, he corrected gently. But I would welcome understanding. They walked in silence for a moment, following a gravel path between immaculate hedges and vibrant flowerbeds. When they reached a stone bench partially secluded by a weeping willow, Nora stopped. May we sit? I find I need to see your face properly for this conversation. Christopher nodded, signaling the footman to remain at a distance as they sat. I'm listening. Nora gathered her courage. At the Wentworth Music Hall, Lady Jersey suggested that your interest in my unconventional qualities was merely a courtship strategy. That after marriage, you would expect me to become the sort of duchess society demands. She met his eyes directly. She also mentioned that there are wagers at White's about how quickly I'll be brought to heel once we're wed. Christopher's expression transformed from confusion to anger. Lady Jersey, he said with quiet intensity, has a particular talent for poisoning happiness. As for the wages at White's, he broke off, visibly controlling his temper. I should have anticipated such crudeness. I apologize that you were subjected to it. Then it's true? There are such wages. I wouldn't know, he said honestly. I rarely frequent White's. But it wouldn't surprise me. Men of limited imagination often project their own deficiencies onto others. And Lady Jersey's insinuations. Nora pressed. That your fascination with my mind is temporary? That eventually you would expect me to become a proper, biddable duchess? Christopher's laugh was without humor. Lady Jersey cannot conceive of a man who genuinely values a woman's intellect because she has never encountered one. Her world is populated by men who view wives as possessions and marriage as a transaction. His expression softened. I am not such a man, Nora. How can I be certain? She whispered. Marriage changes people. Position and power change people. What if I become a tyrant? He finished for her. What if the man who shares your love of books and ideas disappears once the wedding vows are spoken? He reached for her hand, then stopped himself. I cannot offer certainty about the future. No one can. But I can tell you this, I have spent my entire life resisting the very constraints you fear I would impose on you. What do you mean? I mean that I understand the weight of expectation better than most. His eyes held hers. From the moment I was born, my life was predetermined, heir to the dukedom, future guardian of the family legacy, responsible for centuries of tradition. Every choice I made was scrutinized, every preference judged against the standard of what a duke should be. And yet you conformed, Nora pointed out. You fulfilled those expectations. In appearance, yes. In the ways that matter to the world. He gestured to the grand house behind them. I maintain the estate, fulfill my duties in Parliament, observe the social rituals required of my position. But here, he touched his chest, I have always preserved my true self. My library is not merely a collection of books, Nora. It is the space where I am simply Christopher, a man who loves knowledge and beauty and truth. And you believe I could be a duchess while remaining Nora? She asked, voicing her deepest fear. That society would accept such a thing. Society will accept what we present to them with sufficient conviction, he replied with unexpected firmness. Yes, there will be gossip. Yes, there will be those like Lady Jersey who cannot comprehend a marriage based on mutual respect and shared passion for ideas. But their opinions matter only if we allow them to matter. A breeze stirred the willow branches above them, dappling the sunlight across his face. Nora studied him, the intelligence in his eyes, the strength in his features, the sincerity in his expression, and felt her doubts beginning to dissolve. I want to believe you, she admitted. I want to believe in the possibility you're offering. Then believe this, Christopher said softly. I fell in love with you, Nora Grantham, the day I found you in my London library. Not with the idea of you, not with some version of you I hoped to create, but with you, passionate, brilliant, unconventional you. The woman who debates Greek historians and reads Wollstonecraft and challenges every assumption I've ever held. And if I never change, she pressed. If I remain stubborn and opinionated and occasionally improper, then I will consider myself the most fortunate man in England. His smile transformed his face, erasing years of careful reserve. I don't want a mirror to reflect my position, Nora. I want a partner to share my life, including all the parts of it that have nothing to do with being a duke. The truth of his words was written in his eyes, in the slight tremor of his hand as it rested near hers on the bench. This was not the practiced charm of a society gentleman, but the vulnerable honesty of a man who had exposed his heart. "I was afraid," Nora confessed. "Afraid that what I felt, what I'm feeling, was a beautiful illusion that reality would shatter. That loving you would mean losing myself." "And now?" he asked, hope and uncertainty mingled in his voice. "Now I'm afraid of something entirely different." She smiled, feeling a weight lift from her shoulders. "I'm afraid that if you show me your library here, I may never leave it." Christopher's laugh was pure joy. "A risk I'm prepared to accept." He hesitated, then slowly reached for her hand. "Does this mean, may I hope, Nora?" She twined her fingers with his, the simple touch more intimate than any embrace. "You may do more than hope, Christopher. You may believe." The moment stretched between them, perfect in its simplicity and profound in its promise. Then, mindful of the watching footman, Christopher stood and offered his arm with formal correctness. "In that case, Lady Nora, I believe I promised to show you the Cavenshire Library. It occupies the entire east wing of the house and contains, among other treasures, a first edition of Homer that I suspect might interest you." "Lead on, Your Grace," she replied with a smile that matched his own. "I find myself suddenly very interested in the east wing of your house." The library at Cavenshire Abbey exceeded even Christopher's description. 3 times the size of the London collection, it sprawled through interconnected rooms, each dedicated to different subjects. Ancient texts shared space with modern publications, rare manuscripts were displayed alongside well-worn volumes that showed evidence of frequent reading. But it was not the grandeur or the value of the collection that captivated Nora. It was the evidence of Christopher's personal involvement, the marginalia in his hand, the carefully organized sections reflecting his interests, the comfortable chairs arranged near windows to capture the best reading light. "This is..." she breathed, turning in a slow circle. "This is extraordinary." "It's my life's work," he said simply. "Or at least, the work of my life thus far." Nora moved deeper into the room, drawn to a table where several volumes lay open. "You're comparing translations," she noted, examining the books. "Homer." "Attempting to improve my own translation of certain passages." He joined her at the table, his earlier formality softening into scholarly enthusiasm. "The existing English versions miss the rhythmic quality of the original Greek, I think." "You translate ancient Greek for pleasure?" Nora looked up at him with newfound appreciation. "And here I thought my father was the only person in England who considered that an enjoyable pastime." "One of my many eccentric habits," Christopher admitted with a self-deprecating smile. "Along with cataloguing my own library and corresponding with scholars at Cambridge about obscure historical texts." "How terribly unfashionable," Nora teased, her heart lightening with each revelation of their compatibility. "No wonder you've remained unwed so long. What woman could possibly tolerate such peculiarities?" "Indeed." His eyes held hers, humor giving way to something deeper. "I had resigned myself to a marriage of convenience with a woman who would maintain a polite distance from my scholarly pursuits. And then I found you reading Herodotus in my London library, and suddenly convenience seemed inconceivably inadequate." Nora's breath caught at the naked emotion in his voice. "Christopher! Forgive me." He stepped back slightly, mindful of propriety even in this private moment. "I don't mean to press you. I only want you to understand that what I feel, what I believe we could build together, has nothing to do with societal expectations or traditional roles." "I'm beginning to understand that," Nora said softly. "And to believe it might be possible." Their conversation continued as they explored the library, moving from scholarly discussion to personal revelation with a natural ease that confirmed everything Nora had begun to hope. Christopher showed her rare volumes and personal favorites, his passion for knowledge matching her own. They debated translations and interpretations, challenged each other's assumptions, and discovered a profound intellectual compatibility that transcended the artificial barriers of gender and position. By the time they rejoined her parents for dinner, Nora's decision was made. The fear and doubt that had plagued her since Lady Jersey's poisonous insinuations had dissolved in the face of Christopher's sincerity and the undeniable evidence of their compatibility. Throughout dinner, served in a dining room that could have comfortably accommodated 40 but was set intimately for 4, Nora observed Christopher with new clarity. He was attentive to her parents, engaging her father in discussion of recent parliamentary debates and drawing her mother out on her passion for gardening. Yet his eyes returned to Nora again and again, seeking her opinion, including her in every conversation, demonstrating through actions rather than words the partnership he envisioned. After dinner, when Lady Westmoreland suggested music in the drawing room, Christopher hesitated. "I had thought to show Lord Westmoreland my collection of historical maps," he said. "They relate to our earlier discussion about the boundary disputes in the northern counties." A transparent excuse to separate, allowing Christopher to speak privately with her father. Nora exchanged a glance with her mother, who nodded slightly in understanding. "What an excellent idea," Lady Westmoreland said brightly. "Nora and I shall entertain ourselves in the drawing room. Perhaps you might show us the music room later, Your Grace? I understand the acoustics are exceptional." Once the gentleman had departed, Lady Westmoreland turned to her daughter with barely contained excitement. "Well? Has your visit provided the clarity you sought?" Nora smiled, unable to contain her happiness. "I believe it has, Mother." "And?" Lady Westmoreland prompted. "Am I to understand that congratulations might soon be in order?" "If the Duke's conversation with Father goes as I expect it will," Nora admitted, "then yes, I believe they might." Her mother clasped her hands in delight. "Oh, my dear girl! I am so pleased. Not because he is a duke, though I cannot pretend that isn't gratifying, but because he looks at you as your father has always looked at me." Her eyes softened with memory. "As if you are the most fascinating creature he has ever encountered, and he cannot quite believe his good fortune in having found you." "Does he?" Nora asked, surprised by her mother's perception. "He does. Even when you were avoiding him in London, his eyes followed you everywhere. Not with possessiveness, but with such tender concern." Lady Westmoreland patted her daughter's hand. "I have always hoped you would find a man who valued your mind, Nora. I never dared hope he would also be a duke." Nora laughed, her happiness bubbling over. "Nor did I, Mother." "Nor did I." The gentlemen returned some time later, both looking extremely satisfied with their conversation. Lord Westmoreland caught his daughter's eye and gave a small nod of approval. Christopher's expression was more difficult to read, controlled happiness, perhaps, or anticipation carefully restrained. "Lady Westmoreland," he said with formal courtesy, "I believe I promised to show you the music room." "Indeed you did, Your Grace." She rose gracefully. "I am most eager to see it." "And I," Lord Westmoreland added, "find myself in need of fresh air after our scholarly discussion. Perhaps a brief turn on the terrace." The orchestration was so transparent that Nora had to suppress a smile. As her parents departed in opposite directions, she found herself alone with Christopher in the drawing room, a breach of strict propriety that her parents had clearly sanctioned. "Your father," Christopher said when the doors closed behind them, "is an exceptional man." "He is," Nora agreed. "Though I suspect he was predisposed to think well of you after seeing your library. A shared appreciation for books is a solid foundation for any relationship." Christopher moved to sit beside her on the sofa, close enough for private conversation but still maintaining a respectful distance. "I hope the same might be said for us." Nora met his gaze directly. I believe it might be the beginning of a very solid foundation indeed. Nora. His voice softened, formality giving way to genuine emotion. I spoke with your father just now. I requested his permission to pay my addresses to you. And did he grant it? She asked, though the answer was obvious from her father's expression when they returned. He did, with one condition. Christopher's lips quirked in a smile. That I promise never to interfere with your access to books or your intellectual pursuits. He seemed quite concerned that marriage might diminish your scholarly opportunities. My father knows me well. Nora felt a rush of affection for both men, her father who had always nurtured her mind, and Christopher who valued it so highly that he made it a condition of their potential union. I assured him that far from limiting your studies, I hope to enhance them. Christopher reached slowly for her hand, giving her every opportunity to withdraw. When she did not, he took it gently in his own. I cannot offer you perfection, Nora. I cannot promise that society will always accept us as we are, or that there won't be moments when my position requires compromise from both of us. I don't expect perfection, she replied honestly. Only partnership? That I can promise without reservation. His thumb traced small circles on her palm, the simple touch sending warmth through her entire body. I love you, Nora Grantham. Not despite your independent mind and unconventional ideas, but because of them. Will you do me the very great honor of becoming my wife? The question hung between them, momentous in its simplicity. Nora looked into his eyes and saw everything she had feared she would never find: respect, understanding, and a love that promised freedom rather than constraint. Yes, she said, her voice clear and certain. Yes, Christopher, I will marry you. Not because you are a duke, but because you are the only man I've ever met who truly sees me as I am, and asks for nothing more or less. His smile was transformation, the reserved duke giving way to the man beneath. Thank you, he whispered, bringing her hand to his lips in a gesture of reverence. For taking the risk. For believing in what we might build together. A library of shared knowledge and experience, Nora suggested, her eyes bright with unshed tears of joy. Each volume a year of our life together. Beginning with this moment. Christopher leaned forward, hesitated, then gently pressed his lips to hers in a kiss that promised both passion and respect, a perfect balance that echoed the partnership they envisioned. When he drew back, Nora knew with absolute certainty that she had made the right choice. Not because society would approve or because her position would be secured, but because in Christopher's eyes she saw a future where she could be fully herself while sharing her life with someone who treasured that self above all else. The announcement of the engagement between the Duke of Cavenshire and Lady Nora Grantham created precisely the sensation in London society that both had anticipated. Speculation ranged from the practical, her dowry is substantial, to the romantic, they say he found her reading in his library and fell instantly in love, to the cynical, she'll learn soon enough what's expected of a duchess. Lady Jersey, predictably, was among the most vocal skeptics. A Bluestocking duchess, she was overheard remarking at Almack's. One wonders how long before her scholarly pursuits give way to more appropriate activities. Yet as the weeks passed, even the most determined gossips were forced to acknowledge the evident devotion between the couple. The Duke, far from attempting to change his fiancée's intellectual interests, was frequently seen escorting her to bookshops and lectures. Lady Nora, for her part, displayed an unexpected aptitude for the social responsibilities her future position would require, hosting a literary salon at Cavenshire House that quickly became the most coveted invitation of the season. By the time they were married in a ceremony that combined traditional grandeur with personal touches, including readings from both Homer and Wollstonecraft, society had largely accepted what they themselves had known from the beginning: theirs was a match of minds as well as hearts, of respect as well as passion. and if, years later, the Duchess of Cavenshire was known for her unconventional approach to her position, establishing schools for tenants' daughters, publishing scholarly articles under her own name, and expanding the Cavenshire Library to include works that many considered unsuitable for female readers, society gradually came to accept these eccentricities as part of what made the Cavenshires' marriage one of the happiest and most admired in England. For on the day Christopher had found Nora reading in his secret library, both their hearts had indeed been forever changed, not by conforming to expectations, but by discovering that true love begins with seeing and valuing each other exactly as they are.